Hey y'all, it's Yvonne Emil Elizondo from Silver Moon Astrology and Transpersonal Counseling, also known as Silver Moon Counseling. I have to do that intro just because if I don't do it and I don't let you know where you can find me, silvermooncounseling.org at the beginning, I always forget. And yeah, there we go. So that's why I do it at the beginning. Okay, so I'm here this morning. Today's actually the new moon in Scorpio / solar eclipse. So there is a lot of really energy moving on around all of us. But this video is not about the new moon. I just wanted to mention it so you can watch the new moon video because it is an eclipse, a solar eclipse. So the energy from this new moon is going to last and be sprinkled across 6 months. So if you're interested in that, please watch the video. I will make sure that I link it below. But I'm here today because we have some other pretty important astrological stuff that I think I would definitely like to share with you so that you could use it either for your own information, insight, knowledge, make you wiser, or for self-development, spiritual development, or if you're just trying to plan mundane human things. Yeah, you know what the energy is potentially going to be like, and you can, maybe mitigate the energy. And at the end of the video, I will give you some suggestions on how to mitigate and work with this energy. But first, let me show you the chart. So we do have two pretty important transitions happening here in the next few days. And I'm trying to find my chart. So I obviously cannot do two things at once. So bear with me while I open this chart for us. I want to make sure it's the right one. I'm not, yes, it is. Okay. So the chart that I'm going to share with you is for the 26th, October 26th. But the reason I chose the chart is because it has both of the aspects that I'm talking about that I think are going to be very influential here coming up in the end of October and November. So the first one is Saturn is currently stationed in Aquarius. Aquarius is an air sign. It's a fixed air sign. And we also have Mars stationed in another air sign, Gemini, but this is mutable. Couple of differences here is that Saturn is stationing to turn direct. Oh, thank goodness. Okay. However, Mars is stationing to turn retrograde. So let's talk about what those two influences could potentially mean for us moving forward. Okay, so I'm going to start with Saturn. And Saturn in the chart is ruled by Capricorn and it's ruled by Aquarius. So it's very, very strong in those two placements. I am a traditional astrologer, so I associate Saturn with Aquarius, not with Uranus necessarily, although Uranus has an influence, but that's for another video. So for me, Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius. So Saturn has been very strong in Aquarius as it's been trekking through Aquarius the last 2-something years. Okay, so and it's gone back and forth, Capricorn to Aquarius. And so anyhow, long story short. So we have Saturn that has been retrograde in Aquarius. Now, Aquarius energy is fixed air. So it's that mental capacity, right? So it deals a lot with processes and information and procedures and logistics and how do we get the information from here to the collective, right? It's a very collective oriented, group oriented sign and energy. Even though it doesn't necessarily always want to be a part of the group, it is always focused on the group. And because it's ruled by Saturn, it's always constantly in a state of how do we get beyond the limitations of Saturn? So that's why we consider this Aquarius energy. Oh my gosh, this beautiful crow is just taunting me. I love her. Anyhow, so this Aquarius energy is constantly in a state of trying to figure out how we can move beyond the restrictions or the bounds of Saturn. That's why they're considered the geniuses and the eccentrics, because they think outside the box. Okay, I'm obviously not Aquarius. Okay, but this air energy is very much about all of those themes. And so Saturn in the chart represents the parent, literally. Saturn wants to know and make sure that you are doing the right thing, that you're doing it the right way, that you're taking your time to do it, and that you're learning your lesson, you're being accountable, you're being responsible. And so Saturn is the parent, and that's why sometimes it's wherever Saturn is in your chart natally or transiting, you may have more of a delay. You may have more, things that kind of slow down, don't quite go as quickly, because Saturn wants to make sure that you have all of your ducks in a row before you move forward. And that's Saturn in the chart. It's the parent in the chart. Now, very appropriately, I'm really talking about Aquarius air energy and Gemini air energy. And I don't know if you can hear, but we are having a massive windstorm outside right now. Very appropriate for my my video today. Okay, so that is Saturn. So Saturn, having turned retrograde, is very constricting, and it's very much fixed. Okay, it's stubborn in Aquarius when it's retrograde, and so it does represent status quo. It does represent sticking to the old regime. It does represent, the bare minimum and the foundation, and not exploring outside of that necessarily. Now, Saturn station, whenever a planet is stationed, it's very, very strong. Okay, so right now we're starting to feel the last bits of this very strong retrograde energy because it's stationed. So right now it's like holding on for dear life. Okay, just saying, no, we need to do it this way, and this is the only way we can do it, and it's not going to work because it's retrograde and it's like overly parenting. It's like that helicopter parent, right? Okay, with Saturn turning direct, we are still going to see those themes. Okay, this theme of status quo, the tradition. Okay, really wanting to stick to the bare minimum, foundation, structure, processes, procedures. We are still going to see that, but we're not going to see it in such a way that creates as much division as it does when Saturn is retrograde. Now, the important piece about this, and this is why November looks a little bit more volatile-ish, is because we still have this placement of Saturn squaring Uranus, and Uranus is retrograde right now in Taurus. And this has been the troublemaker for 2022 because these two planets in a square have had a difficult time consolidating their energies and working cohesively. Okay, so, but this is the last pass of the square, which is yay, great. So moving forward, these two energies start to separate. Okay, so the energies of these two planets, Saturn being status quo, tradition, taking your time, versus Uranus in Taurus, it's about freedom and liberation and uniqueness and eccentricism and just figuring out different ways to do things and sudden change. And Saturn is like, no, we're not changing. And Uranus is like, oh, yes, we are. So we have had these two opposing energies working collectively. Just look at our politics all around the world. That's all I'm going to say. Okay. But internally, you may also be experiencing part of you that is, wherever this energy is manifesting in your chart, you may see this need to like, I want to keep things the way they are and be very, stern and strict like Saturn. And then there's a part of you that's like, no, I really want freedom and I'm going to like dye my hair purple. And that'd be kind of cool though. I've always wanted to dye my hair, but I never actually have because I'm kind of chicken. But anyhow, so you have these two opposing energies. So once these planets start to separate, it's a very slow process before we actually see this energy kind of like completely leaving our existence. So November gets a little bit more challenging. Okay. Now, with that being said, let's move on to Mars and Mars retrograde in Gemini. So ideally, Gemini energy is very much, it's another air sign, but unlike Aquarius, where it's fixed and it's really here trying to figure things out, Gemini air energy is very social and mobile and networky and gossipy, and it takes information from one place to another. That's why Geminis are known as the gossipers, right? Because they tend, this crow is just amazingly beautiful and it's just flying right across my window and it's taunting me. I love it. Anyhow, so this Gemini energy is very much about air, like a bird. It kind of goes everywhere, right? Just like that crow, it just kind of goes where it wants to go. But it also represents data, information, communication, social connections, right? So there's this quality to Gemini that's very much all over the place. Now, Gemini also represents, can represent the nervous system. And so when you have too much of going on, you tend to get overwhelmed and maybe potentially feel stressed and eventually anxious. Now, Mars in the chart, because I am a traditional astrologer, Mars rules Aries, which is fire, okay, and it is cardinal fire, explosive fire, and Scorpio, which are turbulent waters, okay? So these two, she's just sitting at the top of the roof next door, and she's just like looking in here. Let's see if you can hear her. I don't know. I wish you could hear her. I hope you can, because she's talking to me. I love you. I hear you. I love it. Anyhow, okay, that was the witchy part of me that just came out. Back to Mars. So Mars is ruled by Aries fire and the turbulent waters of Scorpio. Okay, now Mars, ideally, from a traditional point of view, creates separation, inflammation. It's very quick to move. It's very quick to act. It doesn't stop to think. It just goes, out of the gate, just like those turbulent waters, right? Like when a dam breaks and the dam just kind of breaks and all of this water, turbulent water, volatile water comes at you. That's Mars in Scorpio. Okay. But then we also have Mars in Aries, which is like fire, right? Like a bomb, fire. So Mars is not the slow down, let me think about it. And, let's have some tea over it. Mars is like, no, let's do this now. And we'll ask for forgiveness later. Right. So Mars tends to create inflammation, separation, agitation, conflict. Okay. Because it's so moving around so much. Now, a lot of people say, man, you give Mars a bad name. Well, it's one of the malefic, right? Saturn is the other malefic, creates challenges. Mars is the other malefic. So these two malefics is what we're feeling right now. And malefic energy isn't always a bad thing, right? But it just means that we have to work through whatever the energy is to get to the place where we want to be. So Mars does have a tendency of inflammatory issues, right? Creating separation. But along with that, if you harness the energy correctly, you could use it as a motivating factor. So Mars can be motivating. It could light a flame under your, and you got to get up and go. So it can be motivating. It can be inspiring. It can be passionate, but it's usually not, very passive ever. I would never use passive and Mars in the never, ever, right? Okay. So what does this potentially mean that this Mars is stationing to turn retrograde? Okay, so Mars ideally takes about 6 weeks or so to travel through one specific zodiac sign. But because it's turning retrograde in Gemini, it's going to be in there about 6 months. We already started this a few months ago. So Mars is going to be in Gemini until the end of March. But from the 27th, 28th, actually the beginning of November when it turns completely retrograde, it is going to be retrograde in Gemini until the 7th, 8th, or 9th of January, where it stations and then turns direct. So what does this energy mean? Okay, well, just think about this, okay? Mars is fire, right? It's very impulsive. It wants to go in a lot of different directions, but it likes to, go straight. Mars in Aries is very explosive. It knows its way and it goes. Mars in Scorpio is the stinger. It knows exactly where it needs to sting. And so in Gemini, it's kind of all over the place, like all over the place. I'm still distracted by this beautiful creature. Okay. Anyhow, so Mars in Gemini can become energy that is very scattered, that is, not stable, not consistent. But when it turns retrograde, it becomes even more of that, right? So we may have miscommunications, misunderstandings, misconnections with the, okay, I'll stop. Okay. So Mars really has that ability to create inflammation if you're getting the wrong, create inflammation if you're getting the wrong information, or you're not communicating, or you feel like overwhelmed, or you feel like you've put your hands in too many of the cookie jars. And now how are you going to, fulfill your commitments? Because that's a very Gemini energy. Okay. Now, when it turns retrograde, a couple of things can happen. You can feel that way externally, but you can also feel that way internally, like you're overwhelmed. You don't have direction. You feel like you have too much on your plate. You're going in a lot of different directions that time. You committed to so many things that you can't fulfill the commitments, but it can also agitate your nervous system. Now, depending on where Mars is in your chart, you'll have a good idea of what potentially could cause that anxiety or that inflammation in your nervous system. For me, it's in my second house of finances, and Mars has already started to create a bit of a havoc. Okay. At the beginning, when Mars entered Gemini, man, some things happened and my money went right. And now that it's stationing to turn retrograde, all of that is now being used to pay bills and stuff that I didn't even see coming, like, to like a lot of stuff. So all of that money is now coming back down, which is very classic of Mars retrograde and Gemini in the second house. Money has to go somewhere unexpectedly and very quickly. Okay, so let's talk about what some of this, inflammation, agitation could potentially mean. Again, this is very much about the nervous system. I have been battling, I would say is probably a good word since Mars is involved, the god of war, okay, subconscious anxiety. I'm a therapist, right? And I was like, whoa, look at that. I'm experiencing anxiety. And other people had to tell me I was experiencing anxiety because it's subconscious anxiety. It's so in the depths of things that when it starts to manifest, sometimes we don't even realize it. Or you could be dealing just with regular anxiety, or maybe PTSD, or maybe, social anxiety, maybe social phobia. Okay, whatever it is, there's always ways to mitigate it. Now, I'm just going to give you the very foundation of some of the techniques that I use that are at the very low end of how we manage anxiety. Okay, obviously, if you have PTSD, you would need, additional care, and the level of care would rise. So this is just a very foundational type of approach. So the very first thing I would say is breathe. Like, I cannot I cannot stress enough. There we go. I cannot stress enough how much breathing is important to our nervous system, right? Think about it, okay? If we are not breathing, we're nervous. And the more nervous we are, the less oxygen we're getting to the vital parts, like our brain, to help us make good decisions and to help us calm down. We have the parasympathetic system and the sympathetic system, and they're constantly in the state of like trying to find balance. But breath is the best approach to start to take when you're starting to feel anxious or you're already there. Okay, so the very first little breath technique that I'm going to share with you is the breath of life. There we go, the breath of life. And it's a yogic type of breathing, and it's correlated to the 7 energy centers. Okay, and you don't have to know where the energy centers are by any means. All you have to do is count in. Take a deep breath in through the nose for 7 counts and visualize the energy rising from bottom all the way up, okay, from your tailbone all the way up to your crown space. When it gets to your crown space, you imagine it a little bit higher here in the spiritual crown space. You hold for 3 while the energy is up here, and then you very quickly send it right back down to the heart. Okay, so it would look something like this. Okay, I'm going to try to count. Okay, so it would look something like, and then you do it again. Okay, so in through the nose, out through the mouth. That was a very hard out breath. You don't have to, make it as hard. I wish I had somebody here to help you visualize that. But essentially, you're breathing in for 7, feel the energy go up. You're going to hold for 3, and then you're going to bring it right back down to the heart. What we're trying to do is activate the heart space. Okay, when we experience anxiety, there's a tightness that tends to happen in our chest, mostly because we're not breathing. Okay, but what we want to do is we want to open up that heart space. So that's one way to do it. The other breath that you can take is the 4x4 breathing, which is 4 in through your nose, hold for 4, out through your mouth for 4, hold for 4, and you repeat that over and over until you feel like the anxiety is starting to reduce itself. The last type of breath that I use with my clients is very, very simple. You breathe in through your nose, maybe for 4 or 5 counts, and then you breathe out slowly, but intentionally through your mouth for about 6 or 7 counts. The out breath is always longer than the in breath. Okay. Those are breathing techniques. The other thing that I would highly recommend during this time, because this is very Mars in Gemini, is journaling. Here's my little journal. Carry this everywhere with me. Journaling, okay? Writing, Gemini, okay? And getting all of that out. Okay, so very Mars and Gemini energy, journal for sure. And the other piece that I would say is meditate, obviously, right? We want to meditate, whether it's guided meditation or music meditation. We just want to make sure that we are spending some time to help de-stress the body. I have been working with self-hypnosis to try to release all of these emotions that are subconscious anxiety that have been trapped in my body. And that's a whole other video. But if you are interested in learning how to release emotions from your body, or just want to work with a therapist, come and see me. Okay. Woo. So there are some techniques that you can use to help mitigate this anxiety that we may all be feeling during this Mars retrograde in Gemini. Also driving, be very careful with driving. I cannot underestimate. Why am I saying that? Understate that Mars in Gemini, especially when it's retrograde, it's like energy goes. And I have been seeing some crazy, crazy driving. I mean, crazy. Like this guy was in this lane and just out of the blue, he's like, nah, I'm just going to cut everybody off and just go because I need my exit over here. Okay. That kind of stuff. So please be careful. I don't know if you can hear that, but that's a plane. And that again is air energy. How cool is that? Okay. So please be careful with the driving. Also, if you are going to fly, you may want to check your astrology just to make sure that, you know, you've got some good timing going on. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We have this energy that's taking us into November. November does look a little bit more challenging, but after November, things, you know, eventually start to begin to ease out. And that is it. If you want to learn more about your astrology, or if you're just looking to work with, you know, a therapist, or if you just want to share recommendations, I would be happy to take them. All right, everyone. You can find me at silvermooncounseling.org. That is silvermooncounseling.org. And I hope everyone has an amazing Tuesday and enjoy the new moon in Scorpio / solar eclipse. And yeah, that's about it. Take care, everyone. Blessed be.